This is Brenda Leza, and I'm with Jim Lauer, and we are going to be doing the coaching conversation for the Jim's professional growth plan that we've developed. This is new for our district. This isn't something that we normally use, and we don't usually use. We haven't formally been taught the ORID questioning techniques. They are used, but probably more in an unofficial manner. So this was some new vocabulary for both of us, actually. So we have developed a plan. Jim and I worked on this together. Mr. Woods is not available. He was in our previous video. He has a speech contest, so he was out of town. And so Jim and I are going to do this together, and we're going to work through the process. It may be a little rough since the vocabulary is new to us, but we're going to do the best we can. All right, let me get this. There we go. I think we're good. All right. So for your plan that we talked about, we're building off of the lesson that I observed yesterday in class.
Right.
And we were talking about, through that process, of developing some more assessments for students. And so do you want to talk about what you are hoping to incorporate?
What I'd like to incorporate with the students would be that they would do a lot of self-monitoring of their own work. They would be doing some graphing and charting of their progress that they're making when they're in the resource room, and actually when they're in the classroom as well. We've also developed some writing rubrics to use so the kids, so they can check their work to see how that goes along with the rubrics. And we also developed a plan where they would have some peer editing and peer tutoring along the way as well. And hopefully that they'll make some progress then as far as towards their IEP goals of reading and writing as well.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that you're really wanting the children just to become more autonomous, more self-directed, self-monitoring their own progress,
Right.
and being able to see that progress as they go.
That's correct. We want them to be a lot more independent, self-sufficient, so they're not relying so much on us.
And so the hope is that they'll just become more responsible and
Right.
take on this role of wanting to increase their scores.
Increase their scores and that sort of thing, and carry this on to other classes as well.
Okay. So some of our questions that we developed was, what has occurred in the classroom related to your teaching objectives since the observation? It was just the other day, but did you take anything back from our conversation the other day? And
We did. We thought about it too, and in the classroom, and again, you use more modeling in the classroom. The students really were engaged with that, and we also discussed having maybe a former student as well come in and demonstrate a speech for them and to model that way. Mm-hmm. We have several staff members who were former students here that have been through the class, and maybe they could come and share their experiences through the public speaking speech course as well.
okay. And we had talked a little bit, and not as much with this particular plan, but we had talked about that self-monitoring, the peer rubrics that the peer evaluations, and using that as another form of data collection,
Right.
to ensure that we're meeting the teaching standards and the goals and benchmarks of the district
Right,
as
instead
well.
of just using the basic Jamestown monitoring, that we'll use classroom assessments as well, and those rubrics will help out a lot.
Okay, and so the goal area that we will be working on and focusing on for the next year will be for our standard number 5, which is your data collection and ensuring that information is aligning with the teaching standards and benchmarks. All right, are there teaching strategies you feel you need to improve upon?
The teaching strategy is basically to improve on, to make sure that everything is clear, that all the students really understand what they're supposed to be doing before we turn them loose on their own and expect them to turn it in. We do want them to be independent as much as possible, but if they don't understand things, we want to encourage them to ask questions, especially in front of a group. If they would, I know a lot of them don't like to ask in front of their peers, but just to encourage them to speak up and say, hey, wait a minute, I didn't get this, what are you talking about when you say this? And that's something that we maybe need to encourage more our students to do.
Okay. As you're examining the artifacts that you have collected and that you're talking about, and hopefully as we collect, what do you feel are some of your strengths in that area? you're bringing to the classroom for Mr. Woods.
What I'm bringing to the classroom is 21 years of experience with special education students. I've been through varieties of abilities, behaviors, learning disabilities. So I think that I can help him with the students who he may not know quite how to deal with and what their level of reading and writing would be, that I would be able to add my expertise into that and to give him some support and some ways that he can better reach the students.
And you may want to think about also helping him to incorporate maybe some of the graphs. That's something we're pretty strong in. We're, as special education teachers, we're graphing every, bi-monthly, at least twice a month, and we're putting those into graphs. And that's been it's been a great tool in our classroom for our students, just visually to see where they're at. And that might be something that you can add to that classroom as well. And,
Right. You show him and show some examples there and how he could use that in his room too.
Right. What additional sources of data could be collected as evidence of students? We talked about yesterday the outline itself was going to be one. Well, that gives us one source of data. And you did talk about some observational notes that you were taking and through the question and answers and your observations of students. Is there anything else that we might be able to collect there?
Well, with the data that we collect, we have he does have some actual written work for the students to do to see, just basically question answer test recall from the textbook and from his lectures, from his classroom notes. We would have that data. We could use some as well. We also have the actual speeches that they give. Some are videotaped. We would have the data with that. We also have some, in the future, we'll have some other daily work, daily assignments that the students do in a variety of different categories. Like the next one will be in poetry, and how the students can research, write, maybe even write some of their own poetry. And we could use that for some data collection on their reading and their writing abilities.
Well, that would be good. And then, you're going to have your peer evaluation and those rubrics. And you mentioned something interesting, which we were talking about the videotaping. And that made me start wondering about perhaps maybe you may want to consider, could the students do a self-evaluation based off of watching their videotape?
Watching their own.
Maybe scoring themselves with a rubric as well, which would be another piece of data.
Watch themselves, and they could score, and we could score it alongside them and see how we match up.
And maybe they might even take that information and set themselves a goal for the next assignment. And,
That's very, very good.
Okay. What other things might be able to do with this data? So it's going to help you as a special education teacher with our data collection. Could help Mr. Woods in his classroom in preparing his lessons, but where might we be able to use this?
Well, we could use these for parents to see how they're for their IEP meetings. We'd use it for the district, the administration, to see how the students are progressing or not progressing along, to set goals for next year in their IEP goals too. We have to adjust the goals periodically through the school year, and at every meeting we would have that data and that information to use and to bring into the IEP meetings for us.
I think it would, we're going to be having some team meetings coming up here too. I think it would be good with the English department to share that information, also in our special education, maybe in some cross-curricular meetings as well.
Right.
Summarize where you see yourself going next year with this. This is, right now we're just developing the plan, so it's going to be a big growth year, but do you see anything, beyond that?
Just to be tweak the data collection and to be able to then help other staff members with the information that they want to gather from their classes. If we can add what we know through the special education department, the training that we have had, and that maybe we can then share that with all the staff, and that it would make their job of collecting data for their classrooms and to report to the state, to the district, a little bit easier and run a little bit smooth, and to coordinate it all into a nice, legible format.
Okay. And so I know we're still in the planning stages, so just between now and the end of this school year, what would you like to get into place so that we're ready to take off with this next year?
Definitely like to get in the graphing, so everyone knows how to graph, everyone knows how to collect data, so I know how to get the data that I need, and that be able to adequately share, and that the administration knows what we're doing, what we're talking about, and be able to read and interpret the data that we have collected.
And I do know that in your PLC groups, you're working on some rubrics now, so that you may want to consider, getting some of those rubrics, the self-evaluations, the peer evaluations, and bringing those in, getting some feedback from your peers on some
Right.
verbiage and ease of use. Maybe even trying some sample copies with some students in your classes this year might help you move faster, next year with that. What supports might you need from the district, or, what can we do to assist you with setting up this goal for next year?
One of the big things is giving the time to put it together. If we have days when we have our in-service or staff meetings, that we're not just in meeting, that we could have time to have work time, put it all together would be one of the main, that would be the biggest support the district could do.
Do you feel like maybe we need to bring in some, perhaps AEA professionals or someone to do some staff trainings? Do you feel you have the skills you need, or do we need some additional assistance with that?
We could bring in some people to in-service the entire staff but start with the departments. Break it into departments, have like a special education department training, and then an English department with the same person doing the training, but instead of a group, maybe a big group discussion, have it smaller, broken down into smaller groups, and that way they would have more one-on-one contact.
Okay. And so, just to kind of summarize what we're talking about here, what do you see for our decisions that we talked about today? Where do you see, what are your responsibilities between here and when we begin this process?
My responsibilities would be collecting the data, making sure that it's organized, making sure it's be able to interpret it, make sure that I know how to explain it to the parents, the staff, the administration, and to make sure that it's accurate and up to date, that it's current.
All right, good. And, please make sure that you come back and let us know if you need any further assistance with that, if you need help with developing those rubrics or getting feedback, or,
Okay.
pulling maybe a committee together, that would be good.
Sure.
All right,
Will
thank
do.
you.